Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the YouTube audiobook series for The Snake and the Rose, written by Abby Matthias. I am Abby Davis, and today we are going to be reading Chapter 27. If you missed Chapter 26, links in the description below, or go to the playlist. And if you are all caught up, we will continue on with Chapter 27, Fatherly Love.
As Damien was driving us home, I couldn't help but revel within my thoughts. I could tell Abby was falling constantly and in a daze. Whenever she looked at him, she fell even faster. Her brain was racing with fantasies of him, and I heard every thought. Both innocent and nasty thoughts came to her mind, which again is human nature when someone likes a person this way. She was battling with the bad ideas as she never had such dirty daydreams before. So to counter-react her brain, she somehow managed to minimize the thoughts by singing within the car. After about a 25-minute ride, we made it back into her driveway and it was time to part ways. But before she got out of the car, Damien started up one last conversation.
I had an amazing time with you tonight, Abby. I would love to have another night like this sometime soon.
I agree with you tremendously.
Abby said lovingly.
Tonight was fantastic. I would give anything to have it happen again.
I was hoping you would say something like that, so I was wondering if I could give you a purpose to do so.
At that moment, she started getting red in the face from the flattery. We both knew where this was going, and it made me overjoyed. However, I held my breath to not break the moment.
And how would you give me that purpose, kind sir?
Abby said teasingly.
Well, by asking you out officially to be my girlfriend, fair lady.
As that question came out of his mouth, I took in her reaction as she started figuratively jumping out of her skin. I could tell her heart and her mind were finally in agreement about dating Damien. Yet she was silent for a bit and didn't respond right away. Damien began to worry as he added onto his statement.
I know I would be your first boyfriend since that bastard Chad, and I don't know if you made any progress on recovering from that. But I want you to know that if you don't want to, I
would love to be your girlfriend, Damien.
She interrupted, finally replying. Upon her acceptance, his face lit up in shock and happiness as he stared at her.
Really?
Absolutely.
Then, to prove it, she gave him a kiss on the cheek. After that action, she wished him good night and said she would text him tomorrow. He agreed, and Abby and I exited his car and headed inside while he drove himself home. As we were walking into the house, I had a smirk on my face as she continued to dwell on what just happened. She was officially his girlfriend and he was her boyfriend. I've been foreseeing this day for a long time, and to be honest, I thought it wasn't gonna come for a long time. Yet with my help and advice, she somehow allowed this to happen, and I couldn't be happier. As she was buried in her thoughts, I had to guide her into the guinea pig room so that we could briefly talk before she went to bed. Once she finally grasped reality again, I saw how confused she became, and I started to explain. You were so out of it just now that I guided you into this room. You must really be into that boy if you're that lost in a daze.
Well, of course I am. It's all true,
she said quietly as her parents were sleeping next door.
You were right. I do love him.
It's not about who was right and who was wrong. It's about how you found a man who will truly treat you like his prized possession. A man who will stick with you through thick and thin. A person who will be by your side no matter what, forever. I can't tell you how proud I am of you.
Proud? What's there to be proud of? You were the one who helped me at the dance club. That never would have happened without you.
She said, shocked. I may have assisted you a little at the club, but you allowed your barriers to crumble down and form a relationship. That wouldn't have happened if you wouldn't have allowed it. And if I remember correctly, I didn't help you make the decision to date him or not. I sat quietly within the back seat. Upon my statement, she took a moment's pause to reflect. I assumed she was debating if she wanted to lie to me or not. Yet we both knew her feelings were undeniable. Her true emotions were displaying themselves, and she couldn't deny them any longer. I managed to bring these feelings forward for her. Yet, she can now say she has a loving boyfriend. After the brief silence, Abby actually came to her senses and said,
Thank you, Darius, for everything. I wouldn't have gotten this far with Damien without you.
I couldn't help but smile as those words sinked in. I guess the reason why I was so touched was because she actually sounded genuine. Most of the time when she thanked me, I could hear and sense the shame in her voice. Yet, as of this moment, her voice was filled with joy and sincerity. It's a step closer in the right direction to breaking the barriers between us. I knew her mind was still deceiving her because of my appearance. However, I knew sometime in the near future things would change. But as of right now, I was making this a core memory of mine and basking within it. As I was in somewhat of a daze, a booming voice filled the air and interrupted everything.
Oh, what a touching moment. Good thing I'm about to ruin it.
Both of our expressions changed while I started looking about the room. I thought the bastard was going to pop in, and I wanted to place Abby behind me when he did. Yet I didn't see him drop in. So growing nervous, I extended my arm out quickly, telling her to grab it for protection, as I saw she was getting scared. Only chaos and destruction was going to come from this interaction. So she started to rush for my hand, but it was too late. For as I was about to grab her, there was a dark blue force surrounding our wrists, and it began to pull us away from each other. As my plan immediately backfired, I focused on Abby and projected my force field around her. First off, I didn't know exactly how I could project the barrier, yet I knew if I concentrated on my target, I could do so. As she was enclosed within it, the blue force disappeared, and she stopped moving. I grew shocked as I learned Satan's power was defective within my force field. But the realization only lasted for a moment before I flew into the wall. Along with being pinned again, my arms and hands were forced behind my back. In result, the barrier surrounding Abby vanished, and the blue force came back. It surrounded her wrists once more to shove her arms behind her back and restrained her to stay in place. Once we were stuck, the evil being behind all of this appeared within the cosplay room. For the person standing in the middle of Abby and I was Satan. His blue force was pushing out of his hands while he had an evil smirk on his face. With that alone, I knew he had dastardly plans to ruin our night. I kept trying to pull my hand out from behind my back, but the sick bastard was restraining us from moving even the slightest inch. All I could do was gaze at Abby to see her frightened out of her mind. However, she was trying to stay strong and didn't say a word. I imagine it was because she was still in the human world, and everything she said could have the potential of waking her parents. Her eyes were almost shooting out of her head as her breathing started to accelerate. Upon taking in my protector child's reaction, I turned my head slightly to the left to aggressively stare at my creator. His posture started to change as he ensured we were fixed in our places. His mouth was still shifted into a smile, but he straightened his body to display more of a relaxed state, as he was taking care of business. At least that's what he would call it. After a few seconds of him dwelling within our struggle, he finally began to speak.
Well. Aren't you guys just two peas in a pod?
I didn't bother answering his question as I knew it was sarcastic saying. He didn't truly know how our bond was, and I wasn't going to tell him. It wasn't any of his business, especially when it comes to involving Abby. So I immediately jumped to the point. What are you doing?
I'm just checking in on my favorite demon.
Don't call me that. You and I both know I am not even close to being your favorite demon, and I hope to never be. I said before continuing on with my statement. You don't just come into a room and start restraining people for a brief checkup. You haven't visited me in over a month, which was peaceful until you showed up. So why are you actually here? After my smart mouthing, his smile wiped away and he resorted back to his agitated state. His eyes were locked on me, and I felt the burning irritation as he spoke again.
You shouldn't have assumed that I'd leave you be. I've just been making a plan of attack to solve my issues you two have been causing.
What are you talking about? Why are we so important to you? What happens between her and I isn't any of your business. Everything between her and I should stay between us. But it seems to me you have a hard time learning that concept.
Oh, I grasp that concept fully. I just disregard it because it doesn't apply to me.
Satan said with an entitled tone.
When it comes to other demons gaining power, I need to make sure I keep them in check. In case you may have forgotten, the last time we talked privately, things got a little heated.
You knew I would gain power since the first day of this arrangement. You're the one who told me that I was going to gain physical powers because of this job. That's what happens when a demon becomes a protector demon.
I know, Captain Planet. I'm not stupid.
He snarled. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he cranked my arms up as they were still behind my back. By doing this, he sent pain to my muscles and tendons as they strained within my arms. As the tension continued, Satan spoke again.
It isn't normal for the Protector Child to gain powers of their own while the Protector Demon gets stronger. She shouldn't even have them in the first place. You obviously did something and aren't telling me. So we are going to stay here until someone tells me exactly what I want to know.
What on earth could we be hiding from you? We don't know anything.
Abby said sternly, trying not to display her scaredness. Upon that question, Satan turned towards her, still displaying his face of anger.
I don't believe you, and it's clear you're hiding something. So why don't you answer my question before someone gets hurt?
This doesn't involve her, I interrupted. She shouldn't even be talking to you. Any noise that comes out of her mouth could wake her parents. So leave her out.
Great point, Darius.
He said, displaying his smirk. Upon that action, I saw Abby squirming, trying to break free from his grasp, as she knew he had a terrible idea in his head. Yet she didn't make any progress. He formed his hand into a fist and quickly pulled it towards him to make her faint to the floor. However, I suddenly saw a streak of magenta fly across the room and form into Abby's demon body. As her body fully developed, she ended up slamming into her closet doors because of Satan throwing her out of her body. She focused on the pain for a moment, but quickly brushed it away as she became confused. Her mind was trying to wrap around what exactly happened while I was realizing the blue force wasn't surrounding her. So upon that, I gazed at Satan to find he wrapped the force around her human body to set it down on the floor quietly. Once the body was set down, he took his hand and ran it down her cheek.
Such a chunky and flattering figure. Just the way I like it.
With that statement in the open, both of our anger levels rose, and Abby acted upon it before I could stop her.
Leave my buddy alone, you disgusting pig!
After her outburst, he turned himself towards her and used his force again to pin her body to the wall by the window. Now, her and I were staring at each other, unable to move anything except our heads. As we were forced to listen, Satan smiled devilishly and added another comment.
This was the best idea you have ever gave me, Darius. I knew you were useful for something.
At this point, my anger was starting to boil over. The fury within me overflowed my body to the point where my jaw and teeth were clenching tight. I kept trying to take deep breaths and stop letting him get into my head, but my mind was getting the best of me. Soon after my attempt, I felt that familiar heat within my chest starting, and I knew I had to find a way to calm down. I didn't want to feed Satan's false suspicions with my malfunctioning powers. I truly didn't know what was happening to me, or what was going on between me and my protector child. But another reason why I needed to contain my anger was because Abby didn't know about the firepower I had. I didn't want her to get hurt or to be scared of me because of this. So I quickly spoke to further the conversation before it was too late. What does it matter to you if I am getting stronger or not? If any other demon with power doesn't concern you, why does it bother you when it comes to me?
Because of the way you are.
He blurted.
Demons who were past humans shouldn't have all of the advantages involving power. It still boggles my mind to this day as to why you were chosen to be a protector demon. Only natural-born demons are allowed in this job field.
What the hell do you mean by that? I'm sure that's false. There are other demons down in hell that were human and have powers.
Very few do. But they've never grown as strong as you have. That firepower of yours proves my point.
At that moment, Abby stared at me dumbfounded as I instantly started to internally panic and made eye contact with her. She didn't know if she could believe that statement or not, so she decided to speak upon it.
What are you talking about? Darius doesn't have any fire abilities.
With that, Satan gazed at her with a pouty face and began mocking the situation.
Oh, you don't know, do you? The little girl hasn't been told everything by her two-faced demon.
I am not little. I am almost as tall as you, so back off.
At that moment, I wanted to tell her to shut the hell up. She wasn't helping in this situation, but I was too busy trying to fight my own emotions that I kept quiet. Once Satan fully took in that remark, he became aggressive and rapidly raised his arm upward to pin Abby's arms above her head and lifted her body off the ground till her wrists touched the ceiling. She obviously winced as her muscles started to stretch and strain themselves. However, we knew he couldn't go any further. But seeing her in that state of worry only aggravated me more.
Keep shit-talking me and I'll make you go higher and drop you.
How can you? I am literally touching the ceiling.
Then let me teach you your first lesson about my world.
Upon that statement, he snapped his fingers and the entire room started to shift. The room itself continued portraying the same decorations and textures, but the size of it was changing. As the ground shook, the walls extended upward and lifted the ceiling higher than the house. The floor scaled larger by at least 5 feet and made more ground for us to stand on. However, his main task was to alter the height of the walls rather than enlarge the ground. Once the room was done changing, Satan then glared at Abby again.
Anything in the demon world can be modified by a powerful entity, aka someone like me.
And upon that, he launched her further into the air. As she was raised higher up, all I heard from her were cries and pleas for him to stop. Her body was officially overconsumed with fear and terror that she couldn't keep herself together anymore. All I was able to do was watch her scream as she was helplessly hanging multiple feet off the ground. She was being tortured by the devil himself and didn't deserve any of this. I know she was smart-mouthing him and digging this hole for herself. Yet she was talking with her emotions, and she had every right to. However, it was at this very moment where all my anger flowed out of my body and physically displayed itself for all to see. "Let go of her, you deranged monster!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. Once I shouted that, Satan stared at me with his dastardly smile while Abby peered at me horror-struck once more. For at that moment, I was engulfed in flames from head to toe. I could feel the heat spreading throughout my entire body as I stared at Satan with my fiery red eyes. I was fed up with everything, and I kept glaring at Satan as he continued talking.
See, Abby? He isn't the demon you thought he was.
Don't you fucking dare go and start twisting the truth. I only kept this power a secret so I could protect her. She is not the one with the concerning power ability. Leave her out of this. I shouldn't have to keep telling you that.
This has everything to do with her. This partnership that you have doesn't work without her. Your powers evolve because of her.
She can't control what kind of powers I gain. You know damn well none of us control that. Why are you doing this to an innocent child? All she wants to do is live her life normally, and all you do is come in and screw everything up. What makes you think you can do this to someone you don't own?
Because I know I will get answers from her instead of you. It's easier to scare and break her down to the point of admitting everything to me. I've dealt with you and your stubbornness for years now and have barely gotten anything out of you. She is weak and willing to give information within dire situations. I will get answers about this bond you have with her by any means necessary.
This partnership wasn't her fault. It's just like you said, it was by random choice that her and I were partnered together. And another thing, I can't give you answers if I don't have them myself. Maybe if you would have explained things to us right from the bat, none of this would be happening.
This isn't a problem on my end. If it was, you nor your human would have powers right now.
But what makes you think that this is the best method?
Abby said, intruding again. Abby, please stop talking! You're making matters worse! I screamed, having enough of her blurt-outs. At that moment, I wish I could just shut her mouth. Every time she spoke, her situation was only getting worse. Yet I couldn't control her at this point, and Satan disregarded my comment to answer Abby.
Because eventually, one of you will break and spill out information.
Then once again, he raised her higher off the ground to about 100 feet. As she appeared smaller from being so far from the ground, I could still hear her breathing rapidly, and I couldn't even imagine the terror running through her head. Yet I didn't have any time to reflect as Satan began speaking again.
Damn, Abby. You're getting pretty high up there. I wonder what would happen if I would just...
And he broke the force holding her up to initiate her falling sequence. No! I cried, trying to break the force holding me. Abby screamed her head off as the ground was rapidly approaching, but she was caught by Satan's power again before she could touch the ground. After she stopped yelling, he started to laugh as she was holding back tears. But I, for one, had enough of this, and wanted to do anything to make this madness stop. Stop this, you twisted psychopath!
Oh, come on, Darius.
He said, agitated.
Why do you have to ruin all the fun? How can you be so angry at me? You don't even want to be her protector demon. What changed?
She is an innocent being. I don't stand for anyone bringing injustice to innocent people. You are choosing to torture a human girl because of the bad history between you and I. The baggage that you and me created years ago. Don't lay this onto her. Just stop this madness. At that moment, Satan stared at me with aggressive eyes as he knew I was feeling defeated. Him and I kept eye contact for the remainder of our conversation.
Then I suggest you give me answers. Why does she have powers? What did you do?
I didn't do anything. She gained them spontaneously. I had nothing to do with it, and I was just as shocked as you. We found out at the same time. You have seen everything that's happened between us. Plus, you're Mr. Powerful and all-knowing according to yourself. So if we were hiding something, you would have found out by now. None of that was my doing, and I don't know anything about it. After he squinted at me for a few seconds, he breathed a sigh of frustration and replied,
Those aren't good enough answers. Yet I can tell, for once, you're telling the truth. But lucky for all of us, I have the greatest solution.
He then paused, of course, for dramatic effect to make Abby anxious, while I grew concerned. After the brief silence, he continued on.
Either we both get to stand here and watch Abby be punished, or you take the blame for everything and receive a different punishment than her. Your choice, Darius.
Upon the finishing of his statement, I glared at Abby again to truly ponder my decision. Yet there really wasn't any debate. I could see a small tear rolling down her face from the amount of pain and horror she was in as she hung helplessly by her wrists. She was taking all of the punishment while I was stuck on the wall watching. How could I just stand here and decide to continue on with her suffering? This never should have been happening to her in the first place. This was all because of my past. This was all my mistake because of that deal I made so many years ago. I screwed my life and knew I had to take responsibility for my decisions. Abby was a young and precious girl who had her whole life ahead of her. I just wanted her to live her life normally, just like I wanted my son to. It wasn't fair for that idea to be crushed because of my mistake. So as Abby gazed into my eyes, my flames diminished as I gave Satan my response. Give the punishment to me.
Darius, no! No!
She cried. However, Satan didn't pay attention to her and eventually made eye contact with me to finalize my decision.
Is that your final answer?
Yes, I replied with defeat. After the confirmation, Satan straightened his posture and let both of us go. I was unbound from the wall while Abby landed on her feet and started grabbing at her shoulders. I knew it wasn't going to take long for my punishment to kick in, but I at least saw Abby relieved from her pain and somewhat back to normal. No matter the cost, I knew it was better for me to pay the price rather than the innocent child across from me.
Now that we've settled that, we can initiate your punishment.
And with that, he waved his hand towards me to start the process. Upon his action, I started to feel a stinging sensation surrounding my wrists. I didn't know exactly what he was doing, but he sure planned for it to hurt. The continuous sting became more painful as each millisecond passed. I tried to keep my screams and groans to a minimum, yet after a few seconds I couldn't withhold them. Eventually my brain became hyper-focused on the pain and my knees buckled, sending me crashing to the floor. I heard Abby call my name as this was happening, but she was restrained instantly from moving again.
No! Let me kneel down to him, please!
That's not gonna happen. So why don't you shut up while he gets reminded of how much he's bound to me?
He shouted at her. As the pain kept filling my senses, My eyes closed because of the heightened levels of distress. Yet again, after a few seconds, I felt something clamp onto my wrists and the pains started to subside. Once every ounce of agony was washed away, I opened my eyes to reveal what happened. Upon looking beneath my hands, I seen 2 wrist cuffs that were just like my collar. The only exception was that they didn't have a pentagram dangling from them. It was the same leather and spike design that categorized me as being someone's slave. My symbol of constant embarrassment.
Now you have matching accessories to go with your nice dog collar,
He said menacingly. At that moment, I decided to look up to Satan and say, "How are these supposed to punish me, you sick freak?"
They make you my puppet on strings. Or should I say, puppet in controlling cuffs.
Wait, what? I asked with shock, but before I could reflect more on his statement, I was suddenly pulled by my wrists and placed on my feet. I grunted from the sudden movement and jerked my hands back down to my chest as I stood upright. I was stuck in utter disbelief about what these cuffs were going to do to me. I can see it now, my arms just randomly losing control at different points in the day and night. Satan was able to control my arms no matter the circumstance. This was the whole reason why it was a punishment. However, I heard Abby speak in my mind that made me react instantly.
Darius, try to rip them off.
As if it were instinct, I tried desperately to rip the right cuff off. However, it wouldn't rip loose. As I struggled, Satan just laughed and gave his input.
Do you really think it's gonna be that easy to take those off? They can only be taken off unless I say so. As you see, since they developed somewhat from your skin, I can control your arms for as long as you wear them.
That's why it stung so bad? I asked, not thinking twice.
Of course. I truly thought about how I could make you see how bound you are to me while also controlling your power at the same time. This is what I came up with, and it's definitely a win-win situation.
As of that moment, I started getting fed up with his shenanigans again and blurted out, "You are an asshole."
Oh, you haven't seen the asshole part of me yet. But seeing how you think I'm already being one, let me show you that side of myself.
Then, my arms quickly jerked above my head in the same position that Abby's arms were in earlier. I grunted from the abruptness, and a sharp pain developed within my shoulders and arms. Upon my distress, Abby cried out,
No!
Well, look at the mighty protector demon now. Just as puny and helpless as his human. How pathetic.
After that, he twisted my arms behind my back again so hard that I started screaming in pain. I kept trying desperately to relieve myself from the anguish and fight against the spiked cuffs, but couldn't free myself no matter how hard I tried.
Please stop! Please don't do this to him!
I then peered forward to witness the brief interaction between her and Satan.
Then I guess you're gonna come clean and tell me what you know. And if you're not willing to, I'm willing to punish you some more.
No, you won't. I chose for the punishment to be put onto me. We have told you everything we know. If you try to hurt her, I swear. I exclaimed, not finishing the sentence.
Then I guess we are gonna find out what's going on then, huh? Starting with you.
He stated, pointing at Abby.
I don't get how I can solve any of your problems. I don't know anything, just like Darius told you.
You are not the solution. You're the problem.
Suddenly, after that response, Satan dragged me over to stand just in front of Abby and wound my left arm up. I knew he was going to eventually make my arm backhand her in the face. She also read the action and struggled to move herself out of the way.
Darius,
I can't move. I'm stuck in place.
Upon that realization, I quickly lifted my right arm and grabbed the other limb that was ready to swing. As I pulled back on it, I felt the limb attempting to push forward to set it in motion. I was physically fighting with my own body and quickly kept thinking of ways to stop this from happening. I didn't expect to ever be in this situation. And if it came to the safety of my human, I wasn't going to let this kind of abuse happen. It sadly happened once from her ex. I was certainly not going to allow it to happen again, especially if it was coming from my uncontrollable body.
Not even Darius can help you now,
Satan said devilishly. Then upon the last second, I quickly thought of an idea and allowed my controlled arm to go free. As the left hand swung towards her, I used my right hand to project my force field around her to shield her from the attack. Of course, my left hand slammed into the barrier and sent a huge wave of pain up my arm. However, Abby was free from his power as long as my force field was up.
Oh my god! Darius!
She screamed. I gazed at her through the protective wall to see her touching it and staring right at me. I kept breathing heavily as I took a minute to soak in reality. I was able to save her from my violence regardless of the cuffs. I could tell she was on the brink of tears again, as this wasn't a pretty sight to take in. But I couldn't help that we were victims to Satan's cruelty. All we could do is wear him out until all of his frustration was out of his system. Yet I was at least able to free Abby from his wrath for the time being.
This is exactly what I am talking about!
He shouted behind me.
You should not be able to do that and overcome the cuffs. How are you doing that?
I don't know, you crazy motherfucker! But I will not let you hurt her. It is my duty to protect her. Back off! As I said that, I felt the heating sensation within my chest rising up for another fire session. However, before it could fully happen, Satan aggressively raised me all the way to the ceiling. I was in shock about what was unfolding, but I was more panicked and concerned about Abby because of the force field being gone. With that being said, it left her vulnerable to him while I hung by my wrists devastated.
Darius!
She screamed a final time in distress. I then heard the familiar grunt of her being restrained, and I started to shout. Would you knock it off, you piece of shit? I yelled in order for Satan to hear me.
Give me a good reason why I should stop.
Because we seriously don't know anything about the powers. We don't even know what is happening between us. If you keep asking, we are going to repeat that answer. We can't tell you the answers if we haven't found them ourselves.
Well, you better find out those answers before the next time I see you again. Otherwise, the next interaction we have won't be pretty again. I'm done with you two. Figure it out.
Upon his final statement, everything came to a halt. The cuffs were disabled and I started to fall. I screamed from the panic and I landed on my stomach while the room converted back to its original proportions. Then, I heard Satan's evil laugh echo and fade away as Abby was set free from his power. I struggled to lift my body up again after the hard fall, but I somehow managed to prop myself onto my hands and knees. I didn't lift my head up, as I was ashamed and panicked. Abby experienced one of the worst interactions I've ever had with Satan, while also developing more trauma because of him. This whole incident was all my fault, and I couldn't do much to help her. Because of my blabbermouth, I was forced to watch her be tormented, while the instigator enjoyed every moment of it. My body was full of sorrow, anguish, defeat, and frustration as everything was settling in. It almost pushed me to the point of tearing up. This innocent child was put in danger for as long as she was paired with me. We were unwillingly intertwined with each other because of this protector demon job. My baggage was officially becoming her baggage as well. And I don't know how I can deal with that. While I was caught in these reflections, Abby bent down to me and started talking.
Darius, look at me.
She instructed. I didn't listen at first as I wanted to hide my emotions from her. But she took her hand and lifted my head up gently. As we made eye contact, her beautiful emerald eyes stared into mine, and I could see she was emotional.
Darius, I'm so sorry.
She said.
I didn't mean for any of that to happen. I know I shouldn't have said anything. But why on earth would you agree to his punishment?
As I shakily maneuvered myself into a sitting position, I told her the truth. Abby, I had to. For your safety. I am your... Oh! I screamed at the end, for suddenly I felt pain within my chest and shifted my weight to sit on my legs. As that was happening, Abby was panicked once more and called out my name. However, I ignored it to place my hand over the spot where the striking pain was. Yet as my hand laid upon the area, I realized it was that heartbeat thing that was involved with my fire power. I once again sat wide-eyed as I didn't understand why this was happening. As my mind was trying to focus, my protector child started interfering.
Darius, what's going on? Why are you grabbing your chest?
While the rhythmic agony continued, I did my best to explain what was happening to the best of my ability. I think I have a heartbeat.
What? There's no way. You're dead, Darius.
As my mind grew thoughtless, my arm reached out for hers and grabbed her wrist. I didn't want to bicker back and forth about this, and I knew hard evidence would be better to show her than to explain it. So with a swift motion, I brought her hand to the beating upon my chest, as my arm clamped onto hers as well. As I tried to keep my eyes open, I saw her reaction. Her facial expression changed from panic to shock within a matter of a few seconds. Her eyes stayed wide while her mouth closed firmly to make her lips pucker.
Darius, how is this possible?
She eventually asked. I don't know. It only happens with the firepower I have. I have tried looking up answers, but I've gained no information about it.
But why did you keep this from me? You should have told me right away.
Because I didn't want you to worry about me setting you on fire. I needed you to be okay with me first, and I wanted to gain control over it. I was only trying to protect you. We then paused for a moment as the heartbeat stopped again, and everything was somewhat back to normal. So as that was resolved, I let go of her hands and placed my hands upon my lap as I continued our conversation. To answer your question from before, I took Satan's punishment to keep you safe. I am your protector, and there was no way I was going to make you pay for something you can't control.
Don't give me that crap.
She exclaimed, scooting her body towards me to lessen the distance between us.
You didn't have to do that for me. You know only bad things come from you agreeing to stuff like that. I was already taking the punishment. You should have changed that consequence. What were you thinking?
What was I thinking? I was thinking about her. My entire mind and body was hyper-focused on her safety and well-being. I was willing to suffer in all kinds of ways and potentially die within the demon world to ensure her life wasn't being threatened. Nothing is worth her getting hurt. My life was already screwed up, and I was going to use every fiber of myself to protect her from everything within both worlds. All I wanted to do was ensure she could live her life to the fullest and give her the best opportunities I could. However, as I was reflecting upon my feelings, I had a huge realization appear in front of me. My mind finally figured out why this girl affected me so much. How with just a glare towards her could tame my aggressive side and fill me with such joy and calmness. I could finally identify that warm feeling in my chest during our touching moments. It surprised me so much that I was almost nervous to tell her. I've only known her for about 5 or 6 months at this point, and yet I have developed such strong feelings about her. Yet I knew I had to tell her the truth. So taking in a deep breath, I decided to tell her to hopefully reinforce my actions. My mindset was focused on protecting you from anything and everything he was doing. I don't want anything bad to happen to you, Abby. My body feels this urge to defend you, no matter the circumstance. Whether if it's in the demon world or human world, I need to protect you. I do sincerely care about you and would do anything for you regardless of the consequences. You are... And I paused slightly before I finished the sentence. Utter shock filled my body as I couldn't believe what was about to come out of my mouth. Once the words were out in the open, it was going to change the dynamic of our partnership drastically, and I didn't know how she was going to react. Yet my entire entity knew this had to be said. So I took a breath and told her exactly how I felt for the first time in a long time. You are like a daughter to me, and I only want what's best for you. After my confession, her mouth opened slightly as her eyes beamed at me. I understood that my statement was very impactful, but that was the whole reason behind my actions. It was my fatherly instincts kicking back in again. This job practically gave me my fatherly role back, except it was heightened because of me having to protect her physically. I saw Abby in the same perspective as if she was my own child. Because of her, I regained my empathy and found my fatherly love that I lost so long ago. By some means, she changed my personality back to its original state before my deal with Satan. All my feelings of agitation, remorse, and regret flew away as if I was restarting my life. I realized that all within the span of this moment. But I knew she wouldn't understand right away.
What?
She said confusingly. I see you as if you were my own daughter, and I know that may sound crazy, but it's absolutely true. You have a strong hold over me, and I didn't know the reason why until now. Because of this partnership, you somehow regenerated emotions that I haven't felt in years and gave me the purpose to be a father again. Since the beginning of this bond, I have always felt something deep down that kept telling me to defend you. But over time, those feelings evolved and grew into something more. Then within this moment, I finally understood why I felt this way. And it's because I would do anything to protect a child of mine. That's why I did what I did. I wouldn't be able to live with myself if something awful happened to you." Abby kept still as she was shocked to hear such words. I could tell by the way she displayed herself that she didn't know how to reply. Yet I didn't know if I was ready for that answer, so I quickly decided to speak for her. "You don't need to reply back to that. It is extremely late for you, and you need to get some rest after all that has happened. Please, return to your body and let's get you off to bed." Once I said that, she hesitantly shuffled herself away from me to do as I requested. Eventually, she grabbed her human body and fused back into it while I recuperated. As everything started calming down again, we both stood up off the ground and left the cosplay room. I didn't know why I left the room exactly, but I just felt like I needed to be by her after what all just happened. But I still gave her the privacy to change into comfy clothes and crawl into her bed. I sat in her computer chair next to her desk while she tucked herself in to rest her body comfortably. However, she had to speak a final time.
Darius, are you going to stay up here tonight?
"Yes, I am. That way I know you're safe, and I am here if you need me."
Okay. Thank you. Good night.
"Good night, Abby." And with that, she turned over onto her side and fell asleep.
This has been Chapter 27, Fatherly Love, from the book The Snake and the Rose. Tune into the next video for Chapter 28. Thank you for listening.